David Matthews with Spark of Life. Our heartbeat is to walk beside those who are grieving, those who have experienced devastating, horrific loss or losses. And we want you to know you're not alone. And I have some grief tips I want to share with you. This is number 8 in a series of our number 1 grief tips. This is the 8th number 1 grief tip. And it's this simple statement I want you to think about this morning or today, whenever you're watching this. You are in charge of your recovery. Nobody else is. I have to have the attitude that I'm in charge of my own recovery. And sometimes people derail me because they have expectations on me. It could be family members who love me greatly. It could be my spouse. It could be your spouse if you're married. It could be a lot of things. I'll never forget this one couple that came to a Spark of Life grief recovery retreat. They had lost their child in a horrific accident. And on the first day of the retreat, we said that your grief is your grief. It's unique to you because your relationship to the one you lost is unique. And so a mother and father, for example, can lose the same child, or two people could lose their spouses, and two different people. There might be a good friend of yours, and the way they grieve is different than the way you grieve. And sometimes, especially when we're married, or we have parents, or we have really close friends or relatives who are involved in this loss with me, that they tend to put their expectations on me as far as how I recover. And this one couple had lost the same child, and they were just devastated by the loss of their adult child. He was about 21 when he died. And on the first day of the retreat that we do, we had just stated that, by the way, you're in charge of your recovery. Nobody else is, not even your best friend or your spouse or your parent. You're in charge of your own recovery. Nobody else is, because people grieve differently. Many times husbands and wives grieve differently. I gave an example at this retreat. If, let's say you're a churchgoer and you've been going to church every Sunday for years, or, however often you go. Well, this couple were churchgoers, and I just happened to make a statement in front of the whole group. Sometimes people say the husband might want to go back to church after the loss of a child, for example, and the wife might not want to go, or vice versa. And I just made that statement that we need to give each other permission to grieve the way we need to. And I need to assume responsibility for my recovery, not yours, right? And so the next day, the guy came to me and he said, David, we could leave the retreat this morning, and we had barely started. And he said, this retreat would be worth it. It's a life changer. And I said, well, tell me what it is, because we can cut down the number of days we spend on the retreat if we can just say one thing, which of course is ridiculous. We can't do that. But he said, last night you said that we each have to grieve in our unique way, and don't force, if you're married, for example, don't force your spouse to grieve the way you do. And since our son died, I've wanted to go back to church. My wife says, absolutely no. I've made her go to church. I've made her go for like many months. I was terrible making her go. So last night after our introduction, we went back to our room and I said, baby, I'm so sorry I've made you go to church when you didn't really want to. You need to recover in your way. I need to recover in my way. And it made all the difference in the world in their relationship, for crying out loud, respecting one another's unique way of grieving. You see, she didn't want to go back to church because everybody said, how are you doing? And because she had triggers there at church where they brought up their little boy who went to church there all his life, and she could hardly bear to go into the building. Plus, there's another factor. She was angry at God. He needed to go back to church. She didn't want to. And you could argue all day she needed to, but I can't say that. I can't say she needed to. I'm not in charge of her recovery. She's the only one that's walked in her shoes. She is the only one that had her unique relationship with her child, not me. I can't tell her what to do in those areas. And so he finally gave in and said, honey, I'm never going to make you go to church again. That is between you and your God, and that's between you and how you deal with this grief. And everything changed after that. Give yourself permission to own your recovery. Some people will call you well-meaning people and make dumb statements to you. Man, we hear that all the time. Like, it's been a year, you should get over it. Really? Get over it? I don't think so. I need to get through it with my pain, with my loss. I'll never get over it. And so other people who might love you try to put their expectations on you. To be healthy, own your recovery. I can't tell you what to do. I just told you what to do, not own, to own it. But, specifically, I can't tell you what to do. But this is a grief tip. You be in charge of your recovery. There's nothing wrong with you that needs to be fixed. You need to grieve. And only you had that relationship with the person you lost, nobody else. So at Spark of Life, we believe there's hope to recover. When you define recovery as living forward with hope, with purpose, with meaning, and yes, with joy again, while giving yourself permission to have bad days and weeks, because grief is a messy business, but you own your own recovery. At Spark of Life, there's always hope. For more grief help, go to sparkoflife.org, sparkoflife.org.